Yeah, the only thing I've run into is the subtitles like getting a little foggy woggy sometimes resetting between episodes. But also, welcome to when we weren't recording. Today we're talking about nothing. So yeah,
Look,
great
man,
episode, guys. See you next week.
Seinfeld did it for like what 15 years.
Yeah.
We can do this. So
Honestly, our best episodes are when we have no topic. Go back and watch all our no topic episodes after the stream.
yeah, maybe we
What
should
he
have
said.
some hot topic episodes like this one. So,
Oh,
some hot takes. Jeez.
I mean, Hot Topic's got cool T-shirts.
Sure.
We never had a Hot Topic here, but our version of Hot Topic, that was like where I got all my T-shirts as a teenager.
Yeah. Then you found the internet.
We were a little behind on that.
The internet.
Not the internet, but like being able to just readily available
Running
to
water.
buy stuff on the internet. And at least when I was a teenager, also that was like what 2003 to 2007,
Yeah.
something like that.
So anyway, people furiously doing math now. So yeah, you were like, we're behind on that. And for some reason I got this image of like, your horse and buggy in the street with your muddy, unpaved streets and somehow also the internet. So
my grandpa actually, we were out for a drive once, driving down not a highway, but like we have highways, motorvej they're called. We have landevej, which is like, or hovedvej, which is like what we used to have before the big highways. So we were driving down that, so like a small highway, I guess. And he was like, this used to be half the size, and there was like trees lining all the way here. And I remember riding my horse to town here. It was just really
your
weird.
dad said this?
My grandpa.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just making sure I had the generation right.
wow.
Yeah. My
That was right. Like, so we would have been born like very early in, like around World War II, I would guess. He's like 80 something.
Sure.
Yeah, I
so
remember there was just like a transition between people having cars and not have everybody having cars. So
right.
That was just weird to me. Think that when they go into town, they just use the horse because they had horse, and that was better than getting a car.
Right. Yeah, wild century, because I remember talking to my mom's dad about stuff like that, and it's like he was old enough, that it's like horses were the primary mode of transportation. And then, he was in Korea rather than World War II and stuff like that. So maybe a little younger, but certainly I think his father and grandfather, and it's like, think about all the history that passed through those, decades and everything like that. So just wild to think that it's like, I mean, there's like 100-year span where somebody was like, we don't have indoor plumbing and we've got a horse, to, everybody's got a car and a TV now, So
yeah,
multiple cars, multiple TV.
Right.
Like, even though like we've had, like, in our generation, great technological progress and big strides, and we're like the first digital native generation, blah blah blah, etc., etc. I feel like even though people say it's just going faster and faster, I would say it's a more, you could like it, to me it seems like you could feel it more from my grandpa's to my dad's generation than from my dad's to ours.
Right.
But maybe that's because I grew up with it, so the other stuff seemed more foreign to me.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, feels more like refinement than it is like wild innovations, right? And then, we've certainly spent a lot more time, with a type of futurism, where it's like we just kind of like, man, we're gonna have like personal robot butlers, and we're gonna have like fusion, And it's just like, so we've just been working on that for 40 to 60 years, and when it finally shows up, you're like, what took so long? Instead of like when cars showed up, they're like, what the fuck is that? And can I breathe when you drive it? I'm mixing it a little bit, but it was one of the funnier stories that I remember, like funny as in odd, whatever, was like when they came out with trains and the train could go like 5 miles an hour. And it's like, can you even breathe when you're going that fast? It's like, bro, horses are still faster. The innovation of a train is not its speed. It's the fact that it just does not sleep. It does not stop. And it's going to get you to your destination as long as it's on this track, so.
And it can take a lot of stuff with it at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, but I remember that, and they were like, oh my God, can you even breathe going that fast? We're like, get on your horse. You can race the train. Like, you'll win. So, except that if it's a race from like New York to like San Francisco, you're not going to win probably because, they just need to throw more coal at it, and you need to like swat horses. So, but.
Go swat horses sounds like a great way to get rid of something. Go swat horses.
Right.
Fuck off.
Yeah. I actually saw a meme this week about like Victorian slang and insults and stuff like that. So that was not one of them, but maybe it should have been. I don't have it super handy. Give me just a second. So
maybe one stuck in your mind or whatever. Like there was just this one.
No, I definitely. Well, yeah, there were some, like they weren't all insults. They were, here we go. So, bitch the pot is a fun one. That just means pour the tea, apparently. So I'm like, oh, okay. Got the morbs, which is temporary sadness, according to this.
The morbs. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah. Honestly, some of these are so ridiculous. I'm like, maybe I should do some independent research before we put it on the podcast. But tight as a boiled owl. That means you're drunk.
Oh yeah. Tight as drunk. Yeah, that one I knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Your sauce box is your mouth. So which
makes sense. I do put sauce into it.
Cupid's kettle drums. So. Which are,
love,
the bazongos. So
that's the word you chose.
I was like, we got dozens to choose from. Let's get something absurd. So yeah, and then not up to dick. I'm not up to dick means that I'm feeling unwell. So they're all neat and interesting. So, but yeah, we are the first generation born to meme. So.
Born too late to explore Earth. Born too early to explore space.
Yeah, right.
Born just enough time for dank memes, or however that one goes.
Pretty much, unless you're like a billionaire songstress and then totally explore the edge of space.
Well,
so
yeah, the inner edge of space,
the upper sphere of Earth.
I'm just going back through the week of like hot takes and controversy so that we've got something to talk about. But
we always talk about I'm sure Trump did something.
Oh, let's not, please. Yeah. No, I'm ready to burn the place down. So, we're not going to get anything else done if we go down that road. So that's all. Yeah. The stuff I was hearing about this morning, I was like, if we were looking at another country, we'd be shaking our heads. And to me, that's a full red line. Like we're all the way down the slip and slide now. So yeah, let's just not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We'll get further talking about, Star Trek or Joss Whedon movies or something, then we'll get there. So
has he even put out anything?
No, he's blacklisted finally. What are you talking about? He finally got caught up in the Me Too movement like a decade too late. But
put out people all the stuff all the time, and like for some reason, the guy who made Chinatown still gets to make movies, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, well,
is he the one that fled to France because
yes.
Right? So that's why he's not making them in Hollywood. So,
Nobody gets
Well,
Oscars and standing
it's
ovations and works with
no,
Hollywood.
he gets standing ovation. He's like a persecuted artist. Is kind of what people go for. He's a
Sure.
persecuted artist, right?
Yeah.
And then people, it's like with I mean, Tarantino's kind of the same way. He's just kind of really creepy.
Yeah,
and,
but
when I say this, I say this not because what they want is the same, what they did was the same, but because actors will still really, really, really want to work with Tarantino, even though Tarantino's notoriously a creep. And really
so anyway, this has been the final episode of While We Weren't Recording. So join us next week.
Isn't
hopefully.
he like, okay, in my opinion, the buzz around Tarantino, to clarify,
right?
that he's a creep.
He's a weirdo. He's divergent from the social norm. Does not put him in the same place as like statutory rape, I don't think. And like if we're going down that route, like Jared Leto is way weirder than Tarantino, in my opinion.
Well, the point of comparison is that people want to work with Tarantino. People will try to work with Tarantino, like,
Sure.
And like, because of a directorial reputation. Oh, I got to work with Tarantino. I don't know. I don't want everyone to be a Ron Howard, but I feel like there's got to be some directors that weren't creeps. Even Alfred Hitchcock was apparently.
They can be creepy and creeps, but if you get a sentence for statutory rape and flee the country, maybe don't keep working with the guy.
Yeah,
right.
Well.
That's the stuff.
But
where
then,
it's
but,
like,
then
that's,
but then we
there's clearly a line there.
CK for jerking off in front of women, which unsolicited jerking off in front of women. It's not very nice, not very good. That's sexual harassment. But
sure,
I feel like statutory rape is worse than fleeing from being actually. Yeah.
Well, I don't think Louis C.K.'s thing is defensible either but not on its own terms. On its own terms, what's frustrating about that, I think he was trying to follow the rules, but he didn't know that the rules had been updated. And the constantly changing rules had been updated.
This is Louis C.K. we're talking about?
Yeah, he asked permission, but then people were talking about, there's a power dynamic. And like, he didn't go to college in the last 10 years. He doesn't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
So, and yet I don't think jerking off in front of women is exactly a wholesome behavior. But he was trying to play by the rules.
Consenting adults
who are angry at him
between
set up
each
in
other.
the first place.
Yeah, what consenting adults do between each other is really none of our business, right? And so,
but that was his whole thing. That was his whole thing.
I get it.
He thought they did,
right?
But
I'm also circling back a little bit to everybody being like, well, so-and-so's a creep and so-and-so's a weirdo. And it's like, if you're into it and he's into it and we're being open and honest with each other, there's not a problem.
If you guys agree on what you're doing, you do you. I don't care.
Right. And in power dynamic notwithstanding, right? Because that is one of those things. Like, the women claimed that they were worried that he was going to like kick him off the tour or whatever the case was, right? It's been too long since I've got the details, but so like as a director, you got to worry about that. But otherwise, right? If someone approaches you on the street, you're into it, go nuts. But yeah, like that. But the difference is. The difference is, at least socially and legally here in the United States, right? What so-and-so director did, statutory rape, which is why he fled to France, where they were just like, oh, no, it's fine here. It's not weird at all.
Entirely accurate. He agreed to a sentence and then the judge reneged. There was a plea deal. And then the judge said, no, we're not doing that. And that's when Polanski fled, because he was already agreeing to go to jail for a short amount of time.
Well, I think the plea deal is with an attorney, and then the judge is okay.
It was agreed to, and then the judge decided, no, I'm making an example out of you. Whichever, like they
judge's prerogative. They just usually follow the recommendation of the prosecutors, right? But they can say no.
Right, but it was Polanski was agreeing to go to jail. Then that was taken away. Then he fled. It was not just because he had been caught.
Okay, so a little bit more nuance, but at the end of the day, right? Judges pass sentence well within the laws and everything like that. So
Yay! You're supposed to do what the judges say, unless it's 2025.
yeah, or your president. So yeah. See, we're not talking about that. Thank you. In which case, you're literally an enemy of the state. Will arrest you. So that's the entire sentence. So yeah, that's the part we're not talking about. So anyway, hot takes today. What a spicy episode! Everybody remember this day. It was the last one, so we got to go all out. But yeah. I mean, some of these guys, like, it's coming around to the point where it's like they're not completely blacklisted still, right? A lot of it has to do with how they handle it. Louis C.K. is making the rounds again. I don't know if he's like, doing tours or something, but I've seen like interviews and some other stuff when I was trying to look for some of his older jokes.
I think he's done at least short tours. A few years ago, he had another stand-up thing came out, and it was really, really funny.
Sure.
He is really, really funny.
Yeah.
Speaking of culture change and funny guys, I watched Old Dads this week, which is a Bill Burr movie, and it's very much about how culture changes between generations, and it's actually it's really funny.
Right. I think I've been somewhat interested. Like, Bill Burr can be fun, but yeah, he's quite old school, and
to me,
it's kind of interesting he hasn't been nailed by some controversy. So
you can't. He's just like he's a bullshit caller, right? He doesn't. Everybody gets a shot like across the bow. If you do bullshit, he's just there. Like, that's bullshit.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's the modern George Carlin. And if you like George Carlin kind of humor, I do. I think he was very funny. Carlin.
Caroline, he's got the button eyes.
Oh, speaking of Coraline, how about Neil Gaiman?
Yeah. I mean,
what happened there? I saw there was some controversy, and that he's like some sexual stuff, but
right.
He's not been arrested or sentenced for anything. Someone just came out, right, and said this happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Little girls, right? I mean, teenagers or something like that. And another one of those where it was like if you got into his personal life, non-standard, right? But what people do between consenting adults is their business, right? So,
well, that was the whole thing. Was it right?
That was again, and teenagers,
and the messy divorce is involved, and
right.
And the sad thing that came out that I found too is he was OG Scientologist. That I didn't realize that before.
Oh,
yeah, like probably it sounds like abused as a child Scientologist. That's kind of like the whole because of the way they handle things. They think that let me see if I get this right. Because your body thetans basically reincarnate, you already have life experience, and as a consequence, even children should have the same punishments as adults, and adults had particularly brutal punishments. You'd have to scrape rust off the whole of the ship if you did anything slightly disobedient or that sort of thing. So, that's like his childhood was Scientologist.
Controversial take here. Cults.
That sounds bad. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Except for Scientologists, who of course run Hollywood and what is it, Saint something, Florida? So
St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
I don't know. They realized they ran a city in Florida.
Oh yeah, dude. It's actually wild, and I can say that now because I'm not there and I'm safe. But yeah, I think it is St. Petersburg. But they well, so maybe I'm just looking at the thing. But yeah, I think it is St. Petersburg. But they more or less, it's like I'm not trying to oversell it. I am semi-echoing and paraphrasing the way that it was described to me, but it's almost like mafia level. Like they own an absurd amount of like the downtown area or something along those lines. And like if you show up and if you're just like loitering somewhat, if you're waiting to pick somebody up, people in suits will just show up and tell you to move along, and you probably ought to because they run the joint. So yeah, it's crazy. One of those secrets I think that mostly only locals know and whatever. But yeah, it was a guy who was like born and raised in Florida telling me this. So I don't know if I even made it across the bridge, maybe like once there and back or something, but yeah, it's like they just run that whole section. So, but and then of course Battlefield Earth, like everybody knows that. So no.
I mean, of all the things, like Battlefield Earth is the most benign, right? Right, Battlefield Earth is just Battlefield Earth. Have you seen Battlefield Earth?
No.
Yeah. I mean, it almost took down Tom Travolta single-handedly at the height of his career. So,
It did. Like
It was the one that
Hairspray was
made.
his comeback, right? I think it was after the height of his career. Would think his Face Off, maybe. Is that John Travolta with Nicolas Cage?
Yeah.
Good movie.
Yep.
Some people are good.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, director?
Wasn't there some form of Scientology-esque movie that Will Smith made for his son? I just don't remember
Was
the
that
title of that
After
one.
Earth?
Oh
Okay.
no!
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I
No,
didn't- Yeah, I didn't realize that there were Scientology connections, but it wouldn't surprise me. But,
I realized it was
his
something.
career was already kind of like slumping a little bit anyway. And then he made that movie and it was like, yeah, we're just not going to hear from you for a couple of years. And then the slap. So
Yeah.
Heard around
Wasn't-
the world.
wasn't really the improvement he was looking for in that space, I think. So
And he's actually on his comeback tour right now. Like making the rounds on YouTube and stuff, trying to get like build up his image again.
yikes.
Will Smith.
Okay.
He came up in some short with some cooking YouTuber from me where I was like, is that Will Smith? And everybody in the comments was just like, man, that dish was slapping. And other puns
Oh
like,
no!
Yeah.
Yikes! I do feel bad for Will Smith. I'll say poor
Why?
Will Smith. I don't
No.
know. Like
He's
I
a
just
man
remember-
who made a really, really bad choice.
In the most
torpedoed his
public venue
career.
possible. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
and he knew it.
I
Yeah.
knew it.
Like what
And it was
what
funny.
possible
Yeah.
positive outcome could he have hoped for out of that? Like if he had done that in the privacy of his own
All
home,
the
in his own
things.
living room, what possible positive outcome could there have been?
I'm not saying
Like-
it was a good choice. I'm just of
Yeah, it was
all
a
the
bad
things we've
choice
talked about so
all-
far.
Like
Getting canceled over that, it's a dumb decision, and I
No.
think it's a disproportionate reaction. I
no.
don't know. He seems like a charming guy. Otherwise, it's
Okay.
not like
So was
No.
Jeffrey Dahmer. By all accounts, right?
wasn't
Being
Jeffrey
charming
Dahmer
does
on
not absolve you of your actions. I'm sorry, it
Oh,
just
mm,
doesn't. So,
yeah.
yeah, like I get it, right? Like it's like he did one bad thing, presumably, but it was pretty fucking bad. Like, okay, he didn't like murder a guy on TV, but kind of, But it's like that's the problem with stuff like that too, right? Is that this is the one public thing that we saw. What is he like behind closed doors that he thinks I'm going to get away with this in public? Was he just so
Mm.
incensed and so pushed over the top that he had temporary insanity and decided to strike, Chris Rock on public television? Like what even mitigating circumstances are there, that would kind of absolve any responsibility? And that's why I'm like, nah, man, it was just bad. It's all the way down bad. I don't like, okay, he made fun of your wife, and I get that, right? Don't make fun of my mom and don't make fun of my wife. Sure, fine, you betcha. But like, if she doesn't tell me to kill, then I'm not gonna then we're all laughing here. Whatever.
She definitely
So
told him to kill. Like he laughed. Then he
Then
saw
she
the
looked and-
expression
yeah.
she had,
yeah,
and then he went up there.
sure. Yeah.
Oh,
But
that was-
that's the only thing. And even still, right? Public television, like what'd you think? They were gonna edit that out? Like, was he supposed to laugh it off? Like, what was supposed to happen here?
I mean, it was so
So-
ridiculous. I legitimately thought it was a bit until he sat and was like, genuinely, till he was angry, yelling, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth."
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, right? It's like you see it and you're like, are they doing a thing or whatever? Because especially if you saw it out of context, if you see just the clip afterwards and not, everything up leading up to that point. So, but yeah. So loved his movies, right? Up to a point, even the bad ones, like I'm an iRobot fan. Yeah, I know it's not true to the material, whatever, but like I have seen worse movies, like all of that stuff. Grew up with Independence Day, all that stuff, right? But
Fresh
you know,
Prince is
you
one
still
of the best. Like, is it a sitcom? Is that what it is? That what
Sure.
it falls under
Yeah.
of all time?
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
good.
So yep,
It's
all
got
of that's
hard.
great,
Like,
but
it's
it's
really
like
got hard. I feel like
you make
Uh,
bad choices, then you face the
Yeah.
consequences. So
Yeah, I get that. That's true, but there's a certain level. There's a certain level where I would just say, I get it, and if he asked forgiveness, I'd say, yeah, sure, dude, just stop that. That's dumb. Yeah, but it's the kind of thing. That's the kind of court of public opinion is so weird and a bit cruel because there's no way to actually resolve anything. It's always just owning people, and then they're just owned until maybe people you don't know, and the kind of like you're part of a crowd, and the crowd turns around its opinion, and it's never like it's kind of personal. This personal accountancy or personal accountability or forgiveness. It's always just cruelty. Maybe I'm just being a bit naive here, but
so I want to break in and clarify. We're talking about owned with a P, right? Because of some of the subject matter that we've got going on here. But
I'm just talking about Will Smith in particular, right? Like Will Smith in particular.
It's not our job to forgive him though, right? And I'm not the one that's like not giving him jobs or anything like that. If he makes peace with Chris Rock, then that's cool. Like he will have always done that, right? Like maybe hyperbole, maybe not quite an equivalent, right? But if you're at a party, if you go to a church function or something like that, and someone walks up and slaps your wife, like, you're going to want everybody to have seen that and pile in with you. You don't want to be like alone and just be like, this abuse has just happened and now I'm the only guy that knows about it, whatever. And I'm not saying like we crucify the guy. I'm saying he made a bad choice. And if his career suffers from that, I feel like that's accepted, right? Like that's the sort of thing that, once it's done, right? Like if you're alone in the room with Will Smith, if you make some joke, are you going to be sitting there wondering like, am I going to get slapped next, or something like that, right? Like
that would be true.
This isn't just like court of opinion, and it's not like, like some social faux pas, like that was assault, on national television.
Right.
So, yeah, like, I mean, so, anyway, I'm going to get canceled if I go down the train of thought that I was thinking, but it's like, there are other things where
nobody's watching.
No, I've been a victim of that already on this
really?
podcast.
Really?
Not like this named one, but with this crew.
Yeah.
So no thanks.
Years ago.
Not keen to
really?
repeat
I'm
it.
sorry
But
about that.
no, it's fine, but it's like people like to take things out of context. Who knows what they're doing right now? So it's like, yes, there are some things in a court of social opinion, around certain people that get canceled where I'm just like, hey man, if there's consent provided, that's supposed to be the pass, right? And they still get, brought out and creamed publicly and stuff, right? So that shit, fine. I'm just saying I don't think it's Will Smith. Like not in this case. It's not Joss
I don't think
Whedon,
Chris
it's
Rock
not Will
consented to
Smith,
being slapped in that context.
right? Maybe that's it. Maybe their private life came out on national television and that was the problem. It's like maybe normally he would be into that. I don't know. Just kidding, because that's going to get me canceled too. But yeah, like that's why I'm saying like all the way down, like the worst thing, he made fun of your wife. She's got a condition that she can't control. That was uncool of Chris Rock, right? But not sure if that is warranting a slap, at any point. Take him aside afterwards, right? Get your social circle to rag on him. That's something you could take to the court of public opinion if you had to.
Isn't a joke of that level like normal at the Oscars? That was his job, to do ribbing kind of jokes. It wasn't even that bad about it. It's just like oh, she has alopecia, so I think you could compare her to GI Jane. It's still
Right.
it's a positive comparison.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't take it that way, right? So that's the challenge too, you know. So
And that's her problem.
Yeah,
right.
that's
I
the
mean, maybe.
that's the whole. I think was it South Park that used this example or something? How you can't just say Asians are good at math, and that's still racist. That's still hurtful, right? That level of racism or that level of teasing is still inappropriate. Even a positive stereotype can be bad. That was the Department of the Museum of Tolerance, I think. Can't believe I remember that episode.
Not one of the 3 that I've seen, so
Don't-
maybe I'll add it to the list.
Oh,
then.
you're a fan of Scott Tenorman of Sty, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know what that is. So
Which
Don't.
episodes of South Park have you seen?
Me? Oh,
so
okay.
the joke is 3, but I can only think to say 2, so I probably seen one incidentally, but I want to say the one where, you know, like the apocalypse happens and Mormons was the right answer. Like, I'm a local to Mormon Central, so you kind of have to watch that one. And then the other one is the Sword of a Thousand Truths, because I'm a nerd and I had to watch that one. So, you know, but
That's the World of Warcraft episode for those people that might not recognize the name.
Make Love Not Warcraft is the name of the episode.
See, there you go.
There you go.
So
Okay.
but yeah, like I've seen snippets of other things and I've seen, you know, memes and whatever. I can say the cast or whatever, but I don't think I've ever, like, it's not like I've started with episode 1 and just gone, you know, or anything like that. So.
I did that once. Oh man.
I mean, there's some really, really good ones in the first season. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it can be worth it, but like if you, at this point, they have so much that you kind of shouldn't do that.
Right.
It's the One Piece.
Them and Simpsons, right? So
yeah,
but even still, and One Piece still has more episodes too, so it's not quite the same, you know.
But isn't like I've never really watched much South Park. I've seen an episode here or there, and the Make Love Not Warcraft episode. But isn't South Park something that you kind of have to watch as it comes out because it's extremely topical?
Not
some
always.
of them are, yeah.
Sometimes they are very topical and very of the moment, and so it's like you kind of have to know what tone are they taking of that season. But there was some like early middle ones that were just very general, like the Warcraft is like it's kind of a moment, but it's also it was such a long period of time that it was relevant for, so you don't need it that way.
And it wasn't even like I don't think it came out when it first got big either. I think it'd been out for a while, right?
And so it became like it had time to reference a meme and then become a meme as well. So it was really, really relevant a long time.
Like one of the famous episodes is all about how Family Guy is kind of creatively bankrupt. If you've ever seen that one.
I don't know.
I'm not.
No, anyway, the idea being that Family Guy's not actually written by humans because it's just random references. It's written by a secret team of manatees who bop random words from one tank to another, and that's how the joke is written. Anyway, it's a big 2-3-parter episode. Cartman and Bart Simpson team up against Family Guy.
I don't remember this at all.
Oh, it's a great episode. Classic. I don't know how I became a South Park expert. I haven't seen the show in ages. I've seen like 10 seasons. That's it.
That's it. That's a mere 250 to 300 episodes.
Did he hear himself when he said that?
Yes.
Who's even counting?
Because there's so much more. It's so.
If you didn't want it to sound so ridiculous, you should have maybe a percentage of how much South Park you had watched, and then we were like, "Oh, I've watched 20%."
I've seen like 30% of it, which is 10 seasons.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
It's a little silly.
There's only 328 episodes despite its long running, so you're probably, what, 50-ish, 50-ish episodes or something. But
I'm sure there's somewhere out there like a guide of like watch these episodes, watch these seasons, and then go free or something like that.
You got to be careful though, because if you get in with the wrong South Park crowd, the other South Park crowds, they're gonna, like. So you're not wrong. Like it's an oddity in my opinion of like internet culture right now and whatever. But yeah, like then you'll get the ones that are like inexplicably like, oh well, you're a boomer. You like seasons 1 through 10, but 15 to 30, those are the best South Park. So like
talking like Naruto with people, it's like very. I'm a firm believer of just watching what was in the manga. I don't have time for all that filler shit. But other people are like, no, you have to watch all the fillers.
Why the fuck would you do that?
Because important things happen there.
No, they don't. That's the point. They're filler.
Yes, that's what I say. And they're like, no. There's a
and the quality drops dramatically. Like if they were good filler, then okay. Like there was actually like an arc or two of Bleach that was actually had like the filler was better than the normal story. So yeah, it was okay. But no, the Naruto filler got like very abruptly bad. And then they tried to like do half the story from the manga and half filler it. So you had to watch the whole thing. It was extremely annoying. So I just gave up and watched the manga or read the manga.
Yep. If you want to talk about something positive, the best Elder Scrolls game's got a remaster this week. That was great.
That's not the best one. Fuck off.
That is the best one.
Jesus.
No.
See what I tell you? If I got in with the wrong crowd, now I got to fight one of you. Are we talking about Oblivion or
Yes.
like? Okay, I saw there was a remaster. So you don't like that one? You like Morrowind?
I liked
Is that the
Oblivion.
one? Okay.
I just think that Morrowind was better in like all fronts.
I just think Alex is wrong.
Because I haven't played them since they originally came out, if anything. So I was like, and certainly not all the way through. So I'm like, a remaster, I can probably hang with that, graphically speaking. So, but
I tried Morrowind when it was like Game of the Year edition way back in the day, and it was kind of fun reading books, but the gameplay was just swinging a sword, and it's put me off any first-person fantasy game ever. Like I'll play a first-person shooter, but that's about it.
You can
First-person
in the remaster of Oblivion, you can turn it to third person. The best way to play the game.
To third person, couldn't you?
You guys are
I don't
psychos.
know, like
into third person.
it's the thing. Like people say, Kingdom Come Deliverance is great, but I'm like, I don't know. This looks like Morrowind, and Morrowind made me sad.
What?
Yeah,
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't have to make sense. It's not rational. I don't try to be rational. I'm just saying it made me
It
sad.
hurt his feel bad.
Like
And he didn't
Morrowind.
like that.
Yes,
I can understand. Like, okay, there are some legitimate complaints. Like, if they ever remaster Morrowind, changing the combat system, that makes sense. That's something that could be a quality of life improvement. But what about it made you sad?
I don't know. It was just unfun. I spent money on it. I was a kid at the time. You got to understand, this was like what, 2002, maybe 2007. I don't even remember what it was. It was ages ago. And like I spent I had this hard-earned. I don't know. It wasn't hard-earned money, but I didn't get much money. I wasn't at the point where I could buy anything now without even really worrying about it, as long as it's not too much. I could probably drop $80 on Mario Kart World if I wanted, but I'm not going to because I have still have limited funds. But that was still like $30 for those 2 or 3 discs of the game edition. I think what really killed it for me though was they had the creation tool with it, and so I immediately played around with that. I was like, oh, I can just cheat in a bunch of stuff, and then I did, and then none of it was fun.
So you shot yourself in the foot
with
and made yourself sad.
Yeah,
and it's Morrowind's fault.
yeah. I didn't want to explore it either. It was just kind of clunky, ugly. What I was expecting was something like a Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2. Even.
Yeah.
That was my sweet spot.
What? Because you wanted the top-down isometric thing? What? You didn't want it.
It's part of what I was used to, and the good writing. Like even in Planescape Planescape Torment is phenomenal, right? That's kind of what I grew up with. Well, even something like Chrono Trigger, but that wasn't expecting that out of a CRPG, or something like Fallout, the original Fallout 1, Fallout 2, great stuff.
So you just really hate the 3D part of like
I don't know. I guess that's it.
I'm confused.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't. It's not rational. It doesn't make sense.
So do you play Baldur's Gate 3?
Oh, that one does look good. Everyone's got the buzz about that one. I probably should.
If you like Top Down, you really should. You should also check out Pillars of Eternity.
I actually started Pillars of Eternity. That one was pretty good too.
And
no complaints.
There's a Pathfinder's Wrath of the Righteous, I think it's called. That's also gets a lot of hype. Yeah. I am very excited about like I'm kind of hooked on another game right now, a Diablo-like game called Last Epoch. But whenever I get tired of that, I am very excited about trying the remaster of Oblivion, my favorite game from my childhood and the best Elder Scrolls game. I will take no arguments against this.
No, you're just a pleb.
And then there's Clair Obscur that came out, and that looks fucking amazing. I'm not usually that into turn-based RPGs, but it just looks so good. I'm really excited about trying that. And you can try both the remaster of Oblivion and Clair Obscur for like $10 with an Xbox Game Pass.
Or free, because pretty sure I can just download it. So
what do you mean?
Free. It's a subscription. I've got the Game Pass Ultimate.
I mean.
So
I mean, if you're not already subscribed, you can try it there for $10.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a subscription. That's what I meant with the $10.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I actually started going through a playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 this week with a buddy because he's played probably, I don't know, well over 100 hours, and he's made it to Act 3 a bunch of times, but he's never finished the game. I'm like, buddy, like, can we finish the game now that all the patches are supposedly out and there will be no more updates? Can we just,
just like this week or last week or something?
Yeah. So.
Oh, wait a second. I know a game that I like that's 3D in the RPG. Dragon Age Origins. That's a great game.
But
right?
it is 3D, but you can very much zoom and make it top down much like the games you like.
I played it top down, like
that is a great game.
It's a great game.
That is a great game.
I've tried to go back to it and
I remember reading reviews though of the others, and I remember feeling a little disappointed that 2 and 3 went such different directions. I wouldn't even bother looking at the last one. What do you say?
It's called Veilguard, and if you
Veilguard,
if you want to read some reviews that are delightfully toxic, then you can check it out. But
I have read the reviews of that one though. They just came up on my feed. This made me think of Dragon Age again recently. Man, like just the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Like here's the thing that'll get Justin going. Hey Justin, I can get you going. Do you want me to get you going? Woke is a pejorative word that refers more to quality than content.
Okay.
Because I don't think people have a problem with shows or movies or whatever talking about the racism or the women's stuff or any of the issues that are the quote unquote woke issues. I think the problem is when they're not dealt with in a way that's interesting or compelling.
Sure.
And that's I think that's what people are getting.
Give me just a second. I'm going to put my brain over here so you can continue with the bullshit that you're spewing. So, like,
that's all I got. That's all I got. So those are the things I've seen.
Yeah.
Like that's awkward, and that those lines from Veilguard that people are pulling out, and it's all kind of lame and quippy, and these are supposed to be dealing with serious issues, and the tone's completely undercut by very on the nose writing that doesn't have any kind of insight or subtlety, and that's the thing I think people want, because I think the same people love, like, apparently the Witcher books, which have these long philosophical diatribes about race and gender and that sort of thing.
Well, so your
But
problem
because
is
they're
that
dealing with these things in interesting ways.
your problem there is that the people that use the terminology woke don't know how to read. So, you're already like setting the bar too high.
Okay.
Cancel me on that one. Just kidding.
Okay. Okay.
Come on, that was it. That was an easy shot.
Ooh, hot
That was an
take!
easy shot.
Wow.
Everybody gets to
You
make
guys are
hot
big
takes but
boy.
me today, apparently. So, no, but I mean, the
No,
problem,
just
I
banter.
think the
Just
problem is that the term woke has been overused to the point that now we've got to justify it, because now there's two kinds of woke, right? We're not talking about woke as in social issues. We're talking about woke as in the quality of you addressing the social issues, which is that's not it, because people will blast things as woke before it has even come out and before they've seen it. So we
Well,
know
that's
that
true.
it's not about the quality,
That's true. That's fair.
So like some of
That's
my
fair.
favorite is like, when did Star Trek become woke? It's called fucking always, so like, we can argue about quality and whatever, but yeah, that's people who want to use the word woke want to also feel good and sleep at night or whatever. I don't know. Like, I don't know why you would bother justifying it, but no, it's like, sure, we blast a bunch of stuff that's woke because it also sucks, because the only interesting thing you did was, have a blended cast or whatever, right? Fine. If that's what you want to attack.
I think it's
but-
I think it's what people are reacting against, and that once they have that in their minds, they
But-
just see that as like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just going to be that other dumb thing again, rather
tip.
than giving it a chance.
Pro
That's true.
tip, if you don't want to be labeled as racist and right wing, then maybe don't just focus on people's race and gender. Their race and gender is, one of the least
Ooh,
interesting things about them, right? You are just a person like everybody else. You've got your specific
Yeah.
challenges if we want to tell that kind of story, right? But like, the stuff that makes your protected class, right? Whether it's your race or your gender or your religion or whatever, like, those are only interesting as far as they impact the story. But just because you're
Right.
black doesn't necessarily mean we have to have a black story, right? Like, if we're talking about science fiction, whatever, like, what are we supposed to be talking about there? There's no shared culture to drive that forward, right? And people blast, the wokeness of a show because, we've got a black captain or, whatever. So, like, there's too many things.
So basically, Justin, what you're saying is, it sounds like what you're saying is, I was right. This set you off.
I mean, in a sense, I guess. So,
Okay, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I just
I
woke-
just-
the whole like
I'm
calling shit
no
woke
enemy
is,
here. I'm no enemy here.
calling shit woke is just like, the lowest common denominator, right? Like, calling shit
yeah.
woke doesn't make you right and the writing bad, right? Tell me why you didn't like it. And I agree with you, right, in the sense that the writing is probably bad, right? And just the fact that you've cast somebody from, pick a minority group, pick their protected class, whatever, that doesn't make the story interesting. Like, if you're like, this is a story about a dragon slaying knight, but he's gay. Okay, and sure. Like, nobody should care about that, right? Unless, like, you need the representation. Like, that's one thing that I've been hearing.
And
But
at the
other
same
than
time,
that,
I think it would be interesting. I think it would be interesting to have stories that appeal to the experience and not just actors that are recognizable as someone like you superficially, because a story about the Black experience or whatever could be very interesting in a sci-fi setting. And of course, that's where Star Trek does its translation. Every alien species is just an aspect of humanity,
right?
But played by, of course, human actors with a little funny doodad on the head. And some of those episodes are bad experiments. The half black, half white versus half white, half black. That whole thing,
Sure.
which is, again, very on the nose. But if it's, and then I guess there's a couple of TNG episodes that really are pretty cringeworthy that we're trying to do that too. But when it works, it's great.
Sure.
Right. And actually, I'm thinking of a short story by Ray Bradbury, and this will date me, right? Not that I was
Shocker.
alive when it was published.
Yeah.
But if
You like
but
old
in the
stuff?
Martian
What?
Chronicles,
Yeah.
in the Martian Chronicles, there's a story. It's just an unrelated bunch of stories about colonizing Mars and all that. In the Martian Chronicles, there's a story about, I think, a couple rednecks on the porch complaining about all the black people, and of course dropping the N-bomb and all that stuff.
Yikes.
And eventually, but the triumphant thing is, think about it's the Martian Chronicles. The black people just leave and go to Mars, and then the white people are left complaining about people who aren't there anymore, and they're just kind of left with their own hate, doing nothing. That's as I recall, that's kind of how it ends. I think there might be some confrontation in the middle too, but that is about the black experience at the time Ray Bradbury is writing in a sci-fi setting, and very, very, very true to life, with an interesting little insight there. And it's a short story. It didn't do much with the concept, because that's what short stories do. They just do one thing. But that kind of, I think having that actually respects the diversity and what you could get out of diversity quite a bit in storytelling. Is having something that is about the black experience, or what it means to be gay, if you're going to have the gay character. Of course, like you said, not every story has to have that.
Right. Yeah, we got to be careful pushing DEI on this show, because that's anti-American now. But other than that, it's like, sure, like it's a story, right? So like stuff needs to be plot relevant, or it's just not relevant, right? Like that's kind of the thing. It doesn't bother me, one way or another, that it's like, oh yeah,
right,
we got
right.
we got black Jedi, black captains, we got all that stuff, because it's like, great. Why are we still talking about this? Like, not in the sense that like obviously it's still a social problem, right? But it's like, shouldn't we be past this? That's the part that annoys me. And here we are getting dragged back in the mud by internet culture is what it's getting blamed on, whatever. But a bunch of racists also have computers, right? And we're gonna complain, so you'll get risky here saying it out loud, but it's like you'll get some sympathy when it's like we're gender bending characters or race bending characters or something like that, because I don't understand the point, especially if it is part of their character, like a defining trait of theirs, or does play into their background or something like that, or like of course ever famous Hermione was black the whole time, just like only J.K. Rowling knew it. And such great lengths that she went through to make her racial references not tropes. Of course, sarcasm, you can soundbite that one later, so it's like, Cho Chowerson.
Yeah, I'll soundbite it right before you say the word sarcasm.
Yeah, right. I know, obviously that's why I've got it in there. So but yeah, it's like, I'm like, we got to get past it, right? Like the fact that we've cast like a black character in the show, like that's not what we should be talking about. The fact that the writing is fucking terrible, let's talk about that all day, so.
Oh yeah. And unfortunately, there's no shortage of here's why the Acolyte is bad kind of conversations. I don't know. I know it by the internet reputation.
I think
I'm disinterested in
the core.
I think the Acolyte really does get hit by a bit of the whole anti-woke culture, though, right? like it's not the greatest Star Wars, right?
That's kind of why I brought it up.
It's not the greatest of Star Wars and whatever, but it's also not the worst by far, that it needs to have the worst rating that it has and everything like that. And so I do think that's a part of it.
Star Wars is worse?
Are you one of the guys who can say Jedi was one of the worst?
What, Return of the Jedi?
There was a time when people said that.
No.
Yeah, there was a time when people said Jedi was the worst.
I love Return of the Jedi. It's got the best space battles. Like, Yavin 4 is great, but Return of the Jedi is where it's at.
I was a perfect age to love the teddy bears. That's all I'm saying.
What Star Wars?
Sure, Well, I mean, obviously, starting from the bottom, you have the holiday special. So. Here's one that literally tears my heart out to say. Book of Boba Fett is worse than the Acolyte.
No.
Yes, Absolutely. Boba Fett is absolutely my favorite character, and 10 out of 10. I love I have come to love the actor that they cast him. I had a problem with it early on with with Clone Wars, because I felt like that they weren't living up to the canon. It was probably one of the first times that I saw them cast somebody that I didn't expect, and whatever, because I think Jeremy Bulloch was the actor's name,
Justin, your sound cut off mid sentence there.
Nice. Can you hear
said
me now?
The actor's name? Yeah, we can hear you now. And
Yeah.
then we didn't hear anything else.
For whatever reason, apparently the news article I had up on the side here was listening, and so I got a Star Wars ad and it killed my audio. So weird. But yeah, so like Jeremy Bulloch was the guy under the armor, if I remember right. And there was backstory, but it's expanded universe and stuff like that. But when they cast shit, I can't, just terrible with names this morning. So but when they cast him, like, I was a little apprehensive and stuff like that, but he's a great actor. I love to see him, that's not the problem with Book of Boba Fett. It's just badly written, so
It's not great.
they focused on a story that I don't want. Why does Boba Fett need to be a gangster? That was the direction we went. Like, fuck all that noise. So
I don't think it's great, Book of Boba Fett, but it's not worse than the Acolyte. The core motivation in the Acolyte, that everything happened because he wanted to go back to Coruscant, was so bad and so badly written. It just taints everything else in the Acolyte. It's so bad. It's horrendously badly written.
yeah, like I said, it's not the best, right? We can nitpick various parts and everything like that, but it's not the worst, right? There's not very much to love in Book of Boba Fett, in my opinion. Like, one of the main things that comes out is that their sound design was on point, but like we've got a scooter gang. Boba Fett gets backed up by a scooter gang in the final confrontation, let alone all of the other things from here to there, right? With the whole, I got eaten by a Sarlacc once, and then I decided to like go take over Jabba's, old operation. Like, none of it was compelling. Like, I love the character for Fennec, and the actress, right? Fantastic. So like, let's deal with all that. We got Boba Fett, great. Okay, we got Din from The Mandalorian, which, by the way, is Boba Fett done right. So just saying, if we wanted to have that kind of show, but yes, because they fucking chickened out. Because they were like, okay, well, we can't put Boba Fett's name on it, because what if we want to do that later? And then they did it, and it was bad, and it was worse than The Mandalorian, because they didn't stick to the character tropes that define him. You can argue whether or not you like Boba Fett and you like that kind of stuff, but that was the stuff that I liked about him. And they moved away from that, and they had to give him personality, because now he's got to carry the show, which they didn't have to do with Din in The Mandalorian. So like, just compare those two shows. Book of Boba Fett is worse than The Mandalorian, in my estimation, right?
Yes, it is.
So
Book of
easily,
Boba Fett is like Mandalorian 2.5 season, like filler season.
kind of. Yeah, right. No, it is, right? It is kind of a filler season, and that they like are like, oh, by the way, it's the shared universe, because he shows up at the end. And isn't it cool that we have these two heroes like back to back and whatever? It's like, yeah, except they're the same guy, or they should have been, it should have been a different guy, or something like that. Like, tell a different story. It's like name recognition stuff, right? There's your take, right? Like, I don't know if it's even a hot take, right? But if your story crutches on name recognition, it's a bad story. Redoing Star Trek for the 5th time and using all the same names and then telling a non-Star Trek story doesn't make it a good story, right? Because you needed that name recognition to get people in the door. That's not a good story. It's not like anybody knew what the fuck Star Trek was when they started watching it.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
it's that sort of stuff that's like, you want to know why it's an IP
Shit.
is because it was well written or well regarded at some point, and your shit isn't as good because you had to write your weird ass story, but with these characters plastered on the front of it, or the ship, or the universe, or whatever defines the IP for you. But like that's why I didn't like the J.J. Abrams stuff. It is poorly written, and if you took the IP off of it, it would have, like, nobody would have seen it. Nobody would have watched it. It would not have been a blockbuster. It only was there because the IP, and then they do the extra insult and disservice by not like living up to the IP. Like, what's the point in that? We're gonna do the IP so we get all the old fans in the door, but then we're gonna tell the old fans to go fuck off because we're not gonna tell any of the stories that you want to see. That's Hollywood. That's a big old chunk of Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, and yet, you know what? One of the problems with Star Wars, though, is in the modern day, a lot of the stories they were trying to tell were stories fans wanted to see, or that would be cool, or at least conceptually, right? Rogue One was almost exactly what people would want to see, and I guess The Mandalorian is another example.
Just
of
so
that.
we're clear, we're talking about
It's
Rogue
just well-
One,
it's
which
just well
is
written.
pretty much like the best Star Wars movie ever, right? Like I give the
well-
Legacy, trilogy its props because it set the standard, right? But literally, aside from that, Rogue One is better. Period. Go ahead, fight me. I've thrown a gauntlet.
Well, yes, you sure have.
You've thrown a
You
gauntlet.
sure have.
The episode is about to end.
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know what else to say at this point. What
Like,
else?
are you
going
going to tell me that any of J.J. Abrams' movies even came close to Rogue One?
No,
were they better?
No,
I mean, we've only got 7 movies. It's not like Star
suppose-
Trek
I
where we got to talk about
suppose-
3 decades worth of movies.
I suppose it's the best thing since Jedi, but I'm not gonna say that it was. There's a lot of eye rolling moments.
Sure.
Is my problem.
It's
with Rogue
not
One.
perfect. It's the best. There's a difference there. I don't like Cassian Andor's
Yeah.
character, or at least some of his philosophy. I don't like some of the choices that he made in the movie, right? But it is what it is, and it is one of the better movies, So, Gauntlet thrown.
Gauntlet thrown.
And Andor is like
Okay.
the best Star Wars show, so you can fight me on that too if you don't agree. But season 2 is
I don't think
getting
I
its
disagree.
feet
I
still,
haven't,
but
I haven't seen much of Andor, but I liked what I saw. So I'm looking forward to watching that at some point. Now that we have Disney Plus on the cheapo package.
Nice.
Yeah.
Should I take us out?
Before they say anything else, probably.
Yeah.
Make it so.
This has been an episode of While We Weren't Recording. You can catch us every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern and support us on patreon.com/brokenjars. If you do, you get access to our Discord where you can argue about Star Wars with Justin or Ben. All you want.
And lose.
Ben,
I don't even like Star Wars. Why are you making me argue about Star Wars?
Ben opens Discord so much, and he will argue Star Wars with you right there.
You brought it up, man. You were
Oh.
like, people don't even like Jedi. I'm like, okay. People
Well,
are
back
idiots
in the
all
day. I
time.
said back in the day.
We have color TVs now, Ben.
Germany.
About how wrong Ben is and how right Justin is,
Yeah.
or vice versa. You can give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.